Hey everyone, and on this NintendoFuse GameChat, we're going to be talking all about Deliver Us the Moon on Nintendo Switch. So Deliver Us the Moon is a game that originally came out in 2018, I think, but it drops on the Nintendo Switch in July 16th of 2024. And this is a sci-fi thriller set in an apocalyptic near future where Earth's natural resources have run out and there's a lunar colony that was established and in order to get some energy, but then they went silent and the energy ran out, and you're basically this lone astronaut sent up to the moon to figure out what happened and possibly get the energy back to Earth. So that's the setting. It's kind of mostly a third-person game, but sometimes first-person thrown in there as well for different settings. And sometimes you're driving a vehicle and lots of different things going on in this game. But Barry, I'd love to hear what your experience has been like.
So I didn't know anything about this game going in. So I started off and I love the story. I'm a sucker for sci-fi, interesting setting, interesting situation going on. And then to start off, you're in your cabin and at first it's first person. I'm like, oh no. At first I was, oh no. So going around looking at things and I get my suit and now it's third person. I'm like, oh, okay, good. So we're running around and checking out different things, and you're going to the launch pad. Going around the launch pad, and going to the facility, and you know, it's deserted. They said this was supposed to be a base, but it looks really deserted. And I'm like, what happened here? And they're run down. I'm trying to, reading these logs and finding out the backstory. And then I come across this ladder. I'm like, what, remove this ladder. I'm like, what do I do with this ladder? It's so weird. It feels like a loaded gun at this point. So I, go on through, and now there's, you have to prep the ship and doing all this stuff in the control room, which is deserted. And I'm trying to start the everything, and it's like error giving me an error. I'm like, what did I do? I gotta go figure this out. I think there's only one specific thing you have to click, and I was just missing it. And I was like, oh, I have to go out here now, and now I gotta bring the elevator down. Oh, now I need the ladder. I gotta go up. Okay, cool. And I set everything up, and it's like, you gotta hurry. And I'm like, what? And I'm like trying to figure this out. And at first, I didn't do it in time, and a cutscene started, and the sandstorm, because there's a sandstorm's coming there, and just destroyed me. I'm like, oh, oh, okay. So they legit meant I had to hurry. I didn't see a timer. Oh God. So now I'm panicked a little more, and I'm going through, and I finally climb up there and get into the ship. We had to hit all the little buttons, and I'm like, what do I push? I don't know these buttons, and I'm trying to figure this all out. And I hit enough and I'm panicking because I know the storm is coming, and I know there will be a death scene. So I'm hitting all the buttons, and I'm just like rapidly hitting. And I'm sure enough, I go up into space, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. Okay. We dock into a station. I have to dock. I'm like, okay. And then I get into the space station, this first person in 0G, and I nearly threw up, and I could not continue because I was like, nope. Nope, my stomach would not let that go. My vertigo hit, and I wanted to continue, and I wanted to see more, but I just could not do the 0G in the first person in the space station. And I was like, I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying it thus far. There's definitely some issues, and it could easily be, clearer on what to do in some parts. But I can't stomach this, literally, legit, and I could not continue past that part.
Yeah, that I totally makes sense. And I about stopped at the same place, but I pushed through and I actually beat well, funny enough, I'll get to there's a little bit of a caveat, a little asterisk to if I beat the game or not. I'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, let's talk about the very beginning of the game. It was kind of boring in the beginning. You are talking to a friend that's there, kind of talking you through things, but it's not clear what you're supposed to be doing all the time, and you are by yourself. I keep thinking that something's going to happen around the corner, and it never does. And so there's really not any, there's no like combat or anything like that in the game. Like I think that's going to happen. It's not. So if you're going into it, just set your mind at ease. Nothing's going to pop out around the corner that you have to shoot or fight or anything like that. And it was just really kind of boring. But eventually, after you get through that section that you're in, Barry, like it actually does pick up. And all of a sudden I was sucked into the story and I wanted to see what happened. And I think that was about that time I was like, I'm going to figure this out. Um, and here's the deal, like the game is not very intuitive whatsoever. So finally, I just, because it's been out since 2018 on other platforms, I just went and found a walkthrough and I had it walk me through it. And I enjoyed the game. But if I didn't have that walkthrough, I think I'd be more frustrated, even though it does pick up a lot of in a lot of ways. It is so not intuitive what you need to do all the time that it would be very frustrating to just kind of wander around and eventually maybe figure the things out. Some things are super simple, but other things you're like, what do I need to do? Including when you're floating around in first person. And if you're confused and it's nauseating, you're like, this is going to be a pain, and it really was. And so I finally got through because I pulled up a tutorial uh, in order to go through it. One of the things as well is this was not very realistic. I think the moon probably is kind of cool. They did a really good job, but the idea that this central point on the moon was mining things and it was shooting something to a receiver on the Earth is so unrealistic because both of these things are spinning and going around the sun, and like there's no way that would actually happen. And you're gonna shoot it at a central piece or a central mark on the Earth. Like that's not realistic at all. But the concept, sure, is great and it was fun and it pulled me in, and so the story definitely grabbed me, but the gameplay was a struggle at sometimes. um, and I've got other thoughts, but let me explain what happened and why I have this caveat of did I actually finish it or not. I got about 90 to 95% through the game. And there's a spot at the end where you have to pull something and put it in between two different platforms, and you have to jump on it in order to keep moving over to the other platform so you don't fall down into this electrocuted water. Well, I made a slip of my thumb on my controller and I slipped into the water and I got electrocuted. Normally, you restart from your last save, no problem, pop back in, and as the game is reloading, it ends up crashing on me and I can't get back into it. And I quit the game, started back up, keeps crashing, keeps crashing, keeps crashing. So I can't continue in the game. I can go back to the beginning of that level, I think, if I go back to the main menu and pick up from the very beginning of that chapter, but I really don't want to because it's going to be a lot of tedious things going through that again. And because I was almost at the end of that chapter. And so what I ended up doing was just looking up the end of the game on YouTube, and I watched a tutorial, someone play through the game from where I was through the end, which was not very much longer at all. I was almost at the end, and so that's technically how I beat the game. So that's quotes, but I don't know. Barry, any more thoughts from you?
Uh, yeah, I'm wondering if you delete your game from your system and re-download it because it would keep the save, if that would work.
Maybe I could try.
But but yeah, I agree. The story was a lot of like, who's this person? Are they alive? Are they dead? What's going on? It is boring in the beginning, but I was also still intrigued because I like sci-fi stuff. May with the whole rotation thing, maybe they only broadcast, so many hours a day, like when they're within range. I mean, I don't know. They don't go into the nitty-gritty. Uh, I feel like there was a lot of ambition. Like someone sat down and said, "I've got this magnum opus that I want to tell, and I want to use video games as the medium." And I think in their mind, they accomplished that. And I think for everybody that enjoyed the story and enjoyed the game, they accomplished that. Does that mean it's perfect? No. There's no such thing as a finished story. There's always revision when it comes to writing. So Could this go back? Could they flesh out things? Could they enhance it? Could they make it less boring? Absolutely. Good to know there's no combat, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, I'm in a
Mhm.
deserted facility that's clearly seen better days.
Mhm.
I'm expecting something to attack me,
Yep.
and nothing ever did. And it's also one of those games that locks you out of, like, at points. Like, you get to a certain point and the door closes behind you, and that door is never opening again. Like, that's it. If you feel you missed something, tough. So it's very much driven, like the narrative is driving you. Like, you are going here. This is where you're going. We're telling you. Like I said, when you get to the control room and you have to hit certain buttons, you can only hit those buttons. When you're in the spaceship and you have the panel in front of you, you can only hit certain things. And that's actually one of the places I died, was in the actual cockpit, because there was like a slider on the left, and I didn't see that slider.
Mm.
So I'm hitting all the buttons, and the sandstorm came and blew me away. And
Yep.
I'm like, what? So the next time I went, I'm like, oh, here's the slider. So it would be nice if those things lit up a little more or drew your attention, because it's not like a puzzle game where it's like, oh, you're giving the solution away. There is only one solution. It's literally not a puzzle. It's clicking the right place on the screen,
Right.
make it a little bit easier, less stressful.
Yeah.
Um, Especially because it's not like we have this big tutorial that shows us exactly every single button we need to do. And there was some hints on the screen, like, here's what you need to do. But I'm gonna be honest, it was like, I didn't care. It was
Yep.
like, this is too much information you're throwing at me in the first 10 minutes of the game. That's too much to ask for someone to care.
Yeah.
Show me. I shouldn't lose the game, and I didn't. You can click around and discover it without reading it. Um, but yeah, and that didn't help the boredom either, because that's the
Mm.
one thing you want to learn, is read through a tutorial when you're already bored.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that if you can handle zero G, if you can handle first person, it's weird when it shifts between first and third. Like, I wish it stayed steady. Give me third person, or give me first. Don't swap between the two. Then I think that's probably a good adventure out there in this game. I don't know. I didn't get past the
Mhm.
point before my stomach got turned. Steve, you can say better on that.
Yeah. I think going back to, I actually wrote this in my notes. Like, I think calling this a puzzle adventure is not really accurate, because the puzzles aren't really puzzles. Instead, it's just figuring out what you're supposed to do next. And that's because that's not always intuitive. I don't consider those puzzles. But yeah, it was really jarring going from first to third person, and sometimes they tried to capture what it would be like in zero G. I get that. But it doesn't translate well over to a video game, because all of a sudden in first person zero G, I'm bumping into things I can't even see what I'm bumping into. If I was really there, I'd be able to turn my head around freely and actually look around, but you can't really do that well. And it just became more of a problem than anything else. And then it tries to reinvent itself throughout the game as well. So you get to the final chapters, and all of a sudden, there's this new mechanic that comes in, and you have oxygen stations that you can now check in on, and they save your game when you go to those. Those were never there before. You had to go get canisters that were around there before you ran out of oxygen. For some reason, we've made all these advancements, but you only get 3 minutes of oxygen at a time. That's all you can store in your suit, your space suit, or whatever, for whatever reason. I'm pretty sure we can get more oxygen than that right now, but only 3 minutes to this character. But you get these oxygen stations, and all of a sudden, it become more of a platforming game in the end as well. And you had to go retrieve things and pull it there, and then you had a lot more platforming at the end too. So it's like every chapter introduced some new elements, which sometimes worked but sometimes were a pain. And it seemed like it was almost like different, like Deliver Us the Moon 1 and Deliver Us the Moon 2 and Deliver Us the Moon 3, rather than all the same game, if that makes sense. Like every time you play a new Mario game, they introduce new mechanics. That's almost kind of like every chapter of this game was kind of like that. And in the end, I'm not going to spoil the end for you, but I'll just say I was really, really, really let down by the ending, and I did not like it at all. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell why, but I did not like the ending at all. I think the other thing that, and this is just an unfortunate thing about the Switch version, there's no sort of achievements at all. There were achievements in the other versions of the game, and so there are certain things that you do in the game. Let's say, I don't think this is a spoiler. So there's one section where you're climbing through some ductwork, or you're actually, like, your little robot friend is doing some ductwork sort of things, and you find two little rubber ducks and you collect them. In the other versions of the game, you get an achievement for finding those things. In the Switch version, cool, you just collected two rubber ducks, nothing happens. Like, nothing at all. So they don't even have like an in-game achievement system. Like, I understand the Switch doesn't have, on a system level, but it would have been nice to actually have those in-game like other games on the system have done. So like, that's kind of weird too. Like, so there's things that I was like, if I was on a different system, I would have gotten an achievement for whatever I just did. It was nothing on the Switch version, so that was unfortunate. So yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that does make sense because a lot of times developers will put little things in there just for that, just
Mm-hmm.
for an achievement, just to let players to accomplish that. So yeah, who knows? That does suck. You have nothing to show for it. It's
Right.
like I did it. I got those ducks, but there's no proof.
Yep.
They serve no function.
Yep. So the game is $19.99 on a Nintendo Switch eShop. Again, you can get it on PS4, PS5, Steam, Xbox, I think, as well. So the game is readily available out there, but if you want it on Nintendo Switch, $19.99. We got review codes from the developers and publishers of this game, so I want to thank them for giving us the opportunity to check out this game. But $20. What do you think, Barry? Is it worth it?
No, no, not from what I played. Unless this sounds up your jam. But I mean, Steve, you said the ending was a letdown. I don't know how long it is. Like how long would you say the game took
That's
you?
a really good question. Let me see if I can look that up real
All
quick.
right. Yeah, because honestly, if you're gonna spend that kind of money on a game like this, and you have other platforms, you're probably better off playing it on those other platforms. It's going to look prettier. You're going to get the achievements, all that stuff. But unless this goes on sale, or you're like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. I really need to try this, and I absolutely want to play it on the Switch, I would honestly stay clear.
Yeah. So it looks like howlongtobeat.com has it listed as a completionist at 8 hours. The main story at 5 hours, and the main plus a little extra is 6 hours. And I'd say mine was a little longer than that. I was probably more in the 6 to 7 hour range. I'm closer to completionist on my run, but also there was some things that just got me frustrated and took me a little longer, I think, to complete. And so I probably was in the around the 6 to 7 hours range, if I remember correctly.
And would you say it's worth the $20?
Um, Here's the deal. Like, at the very beginning of the game, I would have said no. This is dumb, but I pushed through. And when I got hooked on the story, I actually was enjoying it. And then the ending came, and it frustrated me that that's how it ended. So I don't know. I'm torn, because there are definitely elements of this game that show a lot of promise, and I enjoyed. And a lot of it has to do with the story, and there's some platforming elements, and there's some different things you have to do that were really fun. There are times in this game where I had a lot of fun. And then there was also times in this game where I was so frustrated that, like, if I wasn't reviewing it and if I wasn't trying to complete it for the review, I would have quit. And so I don't know. I'm torn. So I think if you're willing to put up with some of these things, maybe get it on a sale. but I don't think I would totally be against recommending it altogether. But I feel like you have to be ready for some of those things. You have to know what you're getting into. And I think if you do, and you're like, you know what, that doesn't sound so bad. I think there's enough of a game where I think you'll enjoy it. I don't know how you feel about the ending, but that's another story. Um, but yeah, I think I can kind of recommend it. I don't know. If I were going to give it to like a score, I feel like it'd be somewhere in the 6 range. I guess that makes sense. 6 out of 10 ish. So it's not a complete I'm not against this game, but I also there's a lot of room to grow. But like we said, that's our opinion. So Barry totally against it. I'm somewhere in the middle, maybe. But if you've played it, we'd love to hear what your thoughts were about the game as well. And if this has helped you, we'd love to have you subscribe here on Nintendo Fuse on YouTube, so you can get other game chats just like this. Also, our podcast that we put out every other week, and interviews and gameplay videos and so much more. Also, be sure to check out NintendoFuse.com. Thanks again to the developers and publishers of Deliver Us the Moon for giving us a chance to play and talk about this game. And we'll catch you next time.